It's almost time for spring football, so what positions do we need some clarity on?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast and Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free for listening to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. And as we approach spring ball, it's here already. Like it felt like it flew by. I'm going to be honest with you. But as we approach spring football, we're going to start talking about camp battles and things that'll be figured out there. Who could be on the outside looking in terms of the roster, because you still got to get your roster cut down to hit the 105 limit. It's a lot going on. Reached out to the insider program yesterday, which if you want to be a part of that, the link is in the description below, or you can go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGators. And we're going to talk about just the offense today. We'll get defense either tomorrow or later in the week. But basically, I reached out to the insider program and said, hey, who do you want to hear about? Which positions do you want to hear about? And so if you don't like the positions that you hear about, that's on you. Join the program, then you can have a say in that and dictate some things here. But the first thing and the most requested one was wide receiver 3. And I'm going to call it wide receiver 3. Okay. I know that I think it was on 3, mentioned like the Z position, which is fine. But the way that I'm looking at it is I'm going to call it wide receiver 3 because they're going to move players around the formation, right? Tre Wilson's going to be moved all over the formation, rightfully so. Probably going to play a little bit in the backfield. We saw him do that as a freshman. So he's going to take snaps different places. We're going to see that a lot, which is why I'm not getting so hung up on the actual position title. It's just wide receiver 3 for us. So that's how we're going to look at that. And I think pretty much everybody goes, okay, J. Michael Sturdivant at the X is the only one I really specify. But J. Michael Sturdivant is going to be at the X. Behind him, Khalil Jackson, Dallas Wilson. Those are going to be the 3 guys playing the most snaps there, right? I don't think anybody's really going to argue with that. I don't think anybody should argue with that. So that's what you're going to see there. Then you can talk about this wide receiver 3 spot. Tre Wilson's the other starter. We got that out the way. I think it starts with Aiden Mizell, right? He was the guy that last year, Aiden Mizell had 17 catches, 202 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he had, 65-yard touchdown or something like that called back because of a horrible blindside block call on Montreal Johnson. It just made no sense. It was the stupidest call I've ever seen. But we saw that. So Aiden Mizell going to be in that competition and probably going to be considered the favorite for that competition, right? I think that most people, when you say, hey, who's going to be wide receiver 3 on this team, I think most people would say Aiden Mizell. However, in that spot, you're also probably going to see Tank Hawkins competing in it. I will say this. For me, the slot, I think, is going to look like Tre Wilson. Tank Hawkins will rotate there. I think TJ Abrams will rotate there. I think Vernell Brown III will rotate there. I think those are going to be your main guys that get slot snaps, okay? So at the other receiver spot, it's going to be Aiden Mizell. I think that Tank Hawkins will and should get some rotation there. I'm not sure how much he's going to be there as opposed to the slot because, again, like he's got elite athletic traits. You put that in the slot, you're going to have fun with it. Aiden Mizell out wide, he's got the size. I feel like not enough people talk about Aiden Mizell's size. Let's say that's like 6'1.5", if I'm not mistaken, as his like verified measurables. That's big, right? Long arms too, like that, and he runs like a freaking gazelle. Like he's just a long strider, gonna eat up space in a hurry. There, like he's gonna be a great target on the outside. I think that he's going to win this battle. I think there's a reason he's widely considered the favorite there. And unless you introduce a new person to that room in the spring portal, I think it's going to be Aiden Mizell. But also rotating for the depth spots there. I think you see Tank Hawkins get quite a few, especially because you'll get to see Tre Wilson out wide too. So I think that opens up the snaps for Tank Hawkins, but having inside out versatility is huge. Like, I think that Tre Wilson, Tank Hawkins could be on the field at the same time, and depending on who wants to line up where or what the play call is asking for, you can kind of just put them wherever. I also think that this is an area where you could see freshmen contribute, partially because like right now, let's be honest, this wide receiver 3 spot, the other outside receiver spot, Andy Jean would be a great competitor for this spot, right? Like I think a lot of us loved Andy Jean's film in high school. I think a lot of us had expectations for him that just never happened. He's at Pitt now, if I'm not mistaken. I think this would be a great spot for him, but he's not here. Your veterans left. Elijah Badger, Chimdike, they're gone. Now you're talking about, and Marcus Burke, who played this role as well, gone. Like, now you're talking about all the snaps that have cleared up at this receiver spot and who's going to take them. And freshmen have to be in the competition here. I think that Vernell Brown III will maybe compete for snaps here. Although I think he's better suited to the slot. It's not a knock on him at all. I know that I forgot who it was. Someone left a comment last week about how Tre Wilson can only play in the slot, and I get it, but that's not that much of a negative anymore, right? Like in the early 2000s, I think a lot of people looked at the slot receiver and went, oh, well, like the slot, it's not that valued a position, right? Like, you go there if you're not good enough to play on the outside, if you're not good enough to win on the outside, which I understand that thought process back then. But frankly, that's just not how it works anymore, right? Like, now teams build their offense with their top receivers in the slot frequently because it's easiest to get you the ball there. So I don't look at that as a knock for people saying that Tre Wilson, oh, he's going to be just a slot. That's fine. Honestly, that doesn't matter. You see all the top receivers playing the slot a ton. Doesn't mean anything. So I think that, but I think also Nate Montgomery has to be thrown in here. I feel like he's kind of been overlooked there. I think Nate Montgomery, like, you look at his film, I think he's going to be great. I think he's got all the skills, all the physical traits to separate and win deep downfield. Think that he can go up and win contested catch battles. And when you're looking for someone to play outside in an offense like this one, I think being able to do those things is incredibly important. And for Florida, having a freshman that can do that is also huge. And like I've said, like, I think there's going to be multiple guys playing multiple roles, right? Like, for Florida alone last year, like, people could talk about, I keep saying, like, I don't know why, I'm going to be honest with you, but Chimdike played in the slot a lot. Elijah Badger played almost a quarter of his snaps in the slot. Aiden Mizell played in the slot a bunch. Tre Wilson, when he was healthy, played almost half his snaps in the slot. You're going to see guys play multiple roles. That's fine. That's how this offense works. So for me, when I say wide receiver 3, I'm not just saying, oh, the other outside receiver. I'm looking at it as less of these are the 3 specific starters at these 3 specific positions. And I more so look at it as these are the 3 guys that Florida wants on the field the most. I think this offense at receiver is versatile enough where you can just say, hey, these are our 3 best receivers. How can we line them up? Where can we line them up? And let's figure it out. Because you're probably at some point going to see someone like J. Michael Sturdivant. Probably going to see him at some point in the slot as a power slot type role. And you can disagree with that all you want, but we saw Justin Shorter there. Like, we saw Justin Shorter play in the slot in this same offense in 2022. Billy has always liked having a power slot rotate in. So even J. Michael Sturdivant, who we're going to call the X receiver, he's going to play in the slot every now and then. So I look at it more as these are the 3 guys that Florida wants on the field the most, unless these are the 3 guys playing X, Y, Z, W, F. I don't care what you want to title the position. This is what it is. So that's how I look at it. That's why I'm going to call it wide receiver 3. And I think it's going to be, by the end of the day, Sturdivant, Tre Wilson, Aiden Mizell. That's it. Those are going to be your top three, in my opinion. With Dallas Wilson, Khalil Jackson, Tank Hawkins, probably TJ Abrams, Vernon Brown III, maybe Nate Montgomery. Think those are going to be probably your biggest contributors at receiver this year, because you've lost Chimdike, you've lost Elijah Badger, you lost Marcus Burke. Like you lost a lot of guys who play wide receiver. And so you got a lot of snaps to clear up. And I think that it's going to be similar to the edge room. It's going to be just people trying to figure things out, which we'll talk about edge another day. Like I said, we'll talk about defense another day. But then we're going to move to the trenches for, surprisingly, the rest of the show, which I didn't think would happen. But it's what we're going to talk about when we get back with Locked On Gators. March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. I mean, you could look at Walter Clayton Jr., you could look at Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey. Like there's plenty of options to look at and just say, okay, this is the star player on a good team. I'm going to assume that they're going to get their projections. Solid bet, not going to lie to you. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And like I said, like we're going to talk about the trenches for the remainder of the show, which again was not expected by my side, at least. One position was, right tackle. That was the thing that, again, in the insider program, I just went by who requested which positions the most, or which positions were requesting the most in this. And yeah, we had wide receiver was there. And then right tackle was the next one, which we'll talk about now. But I think that this is one of the few spots where it's just got to be truly an open competition, right? Like in 2024, the guys that played at right tackle were Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson, played 683 of the right tackle snaps, right? So he played 683 of the right tackle snaps. And Florida's offense played what? 828. So he played 83% of the offensive snaps at right tackle for Florida in 2024. That's a lot of snaps that are going to be available, right? And that's also excluding any garbage time snaps, or that's including, any garbage time snaps. So really, when we talk about meaningful snaps, he played closer to 90-something%, right? So Brandon Crenshaw-Dickson is gone, going to be in the NFL draft, probably going to be an early day 3 pick. Great for Florida. But then you've got all the people competing for it, which Caden Jones, Bryce Lovett, Devin Manuel, Fletcher Westfall, Cam Waits is going to be in there as well. Those are going to be most of the people taking snaps at right tackle or taking competitive snaps at right tackle there. And I know that there's some people that are going to say, hey, Bryce Lovett, some people that are going to say Caden Jones. I do think that there's 2 names I'd like to remove from it early on, right? I want to remove Fletcher Westfall. I'll just say one. I'm just going to remove Fletcher Westfall from it right away. Mostly because I think that he would be given the opportunity to compete at right tackle. But I think that they view him in Gainesville as their long-term answer at left tackle. So that's why I'm going to say that I'm going to remove Fletcher Westfall from this. Just because, yeah, I think that he's going to be better suited to be their left tackle. And I think that in their minds, he's their long-term left tackle. So Fletcher Westfall can be removed from that conversation. Cam Waits, I'm going to hope that they keep him at right guard. I've been very open. I'm not a fan of his And a big part of it is because of the end of the Miami game, that pick where he just gave no effort whatsoever, and it was embarrassing. But even Cam Waits, they had Miami and Samford were the first 2 games. Then he moved to guard. And while I'm not a huge fan of his, I didn't think his film was great there either. He played significantly better at guard than he did at tackle. And so I think that long term, you've kind of been given your answer based on the film. Hey, Cam Waits is a guard. He can be a giant, sure, but he's a guard. He's better suited for guard than tackle, whether it's that his footwork's too poor, too slow, whatever it may be, better suited for guard. That leaves us with Bryce Lovett, Devin Manuel, and Caden Jones, and maybe a portal guy, which I doubt at this point, but those are your options pretty much. I would think that Bryce Lovett starts with the upper hand in this competition. Again, if this were up to me, especially at right tackle, this would be pure open competition. Like I as a coach, I would try to not even go there with this is who I think it's going to be. This is who I want it to be. Like I would just say, hey, whoever it is, step up and earn your snaps, earn your spot. Because I think that's how it should be, especially at a spot where you're replacing a starter and you don't have a proven replacement for him. That's what it should be. But yeah, I think Bryce Lovett goes in there with kind of the, I guess I'd say like he's the early favorite for it just because he's got the most returning snaps at right tackle, at least from 2024, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, Devin Manuel, or actually I know I'm right. Devin Manuel played quite a bit of it at Arkansas, but for Florida, practiced quite a bit of it at Arkansas. But for Florida, only been left tackle. At Arkansas, only played left tackle, but practiced both sides. And I think that right now, when we say, hey, is he going to be there right tackle? I don't know. Because they had opportunities to play him at right tackle last year, right? Early in the year, right side of the line in general wasn't looking good. You had opportunities there. They didn't take those opportunities. I think he's going to stay on the left side. So then you go, okay, well, it's Caden Jones, Bryce Lovett. That's where we're at. It's Caden Jones and Bryce Lovett. And again, Devin Manuel is a guy that has, for his entire career, been thought of as like, okay, he's going to be able to play swing tackle. Has not been asked to play right tackle yet in the game, but he's been thought of as a swing tackle, can play both sides. Great for him. I think Caden Jones, I feel like the limited snaps we saw from him last year, he looked great there, right? Like I think that whether it's Caden Jones or Bryce Lovett, based on what we saw in 2024, I'd be thrilled with it. And I know that there's quite a few people that look at Bryce Lovett and say, all right, he's probably a guard. I don't think you have to do that. Like he's got the size, right? 6'5", 315. That's big enough to play right tackle. I don't think anybody should just discount that at all. Caden Jones, limited snaps. Like that's the big knock, right? Caden Jones played limited snaps, played 28 total snaps last year on offense. One of them was as a in a jumbo package, he was a tight end. That's what we saw from Caden Jones. We saw nothing from him to say that he can be the long-term answer. What he did show looked pretty good. But I think right now you just got to go, all right, it's Bryce Lovett, Caden Jones is the most likely options. They'll probably give Cam Waits some reps there. They'll hopefully continue to give Devin Manuel some reps there and see if he can impress, which, again, I don't think that he's going to stay at right tackle, or I do think that he's going to stay at left tackle. Fletcher Westphal, think he's supposed to stay at left tackle. I think that's the plan long-term for him. But for me, I look at it as Caden Jones, Bryce Lovett. The winner of that is going to be your starting right tackle. The loser of that battle is your backup right tackle. However, if a specific player there loses that battle, they could be in competition for the other thing that was most requested, the other position that was most requested, which again, wasn't expecting, but we're going to still talk about it when we go back with Locked On Gators. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And like I said, I was not expecting to talk about this position today, but I left the conversation open to the insider program. And right guard is the final position we're talking about. And I thought that we were going to see, running back 2 or even tight end 2 at this point, which I think a lot of people are just penciling in Amir Jackson. We have no clue if that's really how that's going to shake out. But I thought we'd see those spots. Instead, right guard was the other most requested position, which Damieon George played 412 snaps last year at right guard. He's back for 2025, which for me, I'm going to be honest. Like, I feel like it's going to be Damieon George, right? From what we know about this coaching staff, I have a hard time thinking that this coaching staff is going to replace a multi-year starter regardless of anything else, right? Unless behind them you have a guy where you're like, hey, this is an all-SEC potential All-American player. I feel like this coaching staff is usually going to go, okay, we're going to roll with the incumbent and just take it in stride. It seems like what they've kind of always done, right? If they've had a guy where he's been your starter for a couple years or even just 1 year, unless he's completely awful, probably not going to replace him. And look, I don't think Damieon George is great by any stretch. He is significantly better at guard than he was at tackle. He was unplayable at tackle, but significantly better at guard than tackle. Still not great, but again, much improved. But let's entertain this thought, right? Like I mentioned about right tackle, it's going to be Caden Jones and Bryce Lovett most likely, in my opinion. Those are going to be your 2 main guys. If Caden Jones wins that, I think you then open the door to have the conversation about Bryce Lovett again, right? Like, because realistically, you can work with Bryce Lovett. Let's say you're giving Caden Jones the right tackle snaps in this drill, right? Or we'll say scrimmage even, right? In this scrimmage, Caden Jones is your right tackle. Bryce Lovett could be your right guard there. And then not only do you get to see Caden Jones at right tackle, Bryce Lovett at right guard, but you get to see how they would play with each other and how they'd play off each other. And I think that that's a huge boost and a huge bonus for the team, right? Because, again, I've always said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I think that when you talk about the offensive line and the success of the offensive line, it's not about the individuals, right? It's about how they play as a unit. So if you get to see Caden Jones at right tackle, Bryce Lovett at right guard, and then you get to go, all right, like they look like a pretty damn good unit together, that could be your answer, right? That could be it. It could not even be about Damieon George. You could see Bryce Lovett and Damieon George on the right side and say, hey, this is a mauling duo. I love it. Those are going to be the guys. You could see Caden Jones and Damieon George. I think I just said Bryce Lovett and Damieon George. Yes. So you can see Caden Jones and Damieon George on the right side and say, hey, that's our duo that we love. Like, there's levels to this, right? Personally, I would love to see a guy like Rod Kearney get an opportunity there. I've never been shy. I think Rod Kearney's high school film was incredible. I think that a lot of what he did in his limited snaps at Florida was impressive. Specifically, we saw him against Texas. We saw him against Tulane. Any other game, he didn't really have significant snaps in, so it doesn't matter. But you got Rod Kearney there. You've got Cam Waits is back there. You've got Bryce Lovett there if he loses the right tackle battle. You've got 3 guys who put out pretty good film. There you've got Jason Zandamela back for another year, which I know many people pencil him in as your backup center. That's fine. I'm not even disputing that. I'm just saying that you can have him in the competition, right? Like, maybe he's your backup center and you want to throw him in the right guard competition. And if he wins the right guard competition, Rod Kearney, congratulations, you're back to backup center full-time. Could be a thing. I think that you'd be giving yourself a disadvantage to just say, hey, we're not going to give this thing a whirl, right? So I do think that when you look at the right tackle battle, which is why, first off, right tackle was requested more than right guard. But also the reason I wanted to talk about right tackle before right guard was I think that the loser of the right tackle battle, or the losers of the right tackle battle, you can look at for potential competitors at right guard. And you can mark that off easy, right? Like, you could put Cam Waits in the right tackle battle. He's probably not going to look good. And then you go, okay, then we're going to keep you in the right guard battle only. Bryce Lovett, we can keep you in both spots. Caden Jones, you're probably not going to do that with. Rod Kearney, you're just going to play all 3 spots on the interior. And if we get you, we get you. Najee Harris, you could play right guard. We can have a competition at left guard. Like, I think that there's a lot of different combinations you can play with. And I will also say this, I think there's a lot of different combinations that can work. I think you go centers, Jake Slaughter, left tackles, Austin Barber. One of our starters is probably going to be Najee Harris. Have competitions at the other spots. And also, Najee Harris should also compete for his spot as well. I don't want to hand anything to anybody, especially when he had his fair share of struggles in 2024. That's how I would look at it, but yeah, I think that those are some of the spots that people want to hear about the most. If you disagree with anything I've said, then go ahead. Say it in the comments. If you want to hear other positions, say it in the comments. I'm going to try to get to everybody that we can because, well, spring football is almost here. Florida Gators football is almost back. And I'm going to hope that, like many other teams have, they don't cancel their spring game. Hope. I'll hold out hope for that. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free. Revis in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators for Locked On Gators. I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.